Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be exploring the world of emotional intelligence with Daniel Goleman's book as our guide.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that feeling where you just know something is important, but you haven't quite grasped why?
Yeah.
That's how I felt about emotional intelligence until I read Goleman's book.
Interesting.
And this deep dive
Yeah.
is going to change how you view success,
Okay.
happiness, relationships, even your health.
I love that.
So,
What's so captivating about Goleman's book is that he challenges this deeply ingrained idea that IQ is the be-all and end-all of success.
right.
He makes this compelling argument that emotional intelligence, how we understand and manage emotions, plays a huge role in how we navigate life. It's
Right.
about thriving, not just surviving.
The first story in the book really hooked me, where the father sees his child about to be hit by a car
Oh, yeah.
and instantly leaps out, pushing the child to safety without even a second thought.
Wow.
Pure heroism, fueled by raw emotion.
That story brilliantly illustrates Goleman's point that emotions are ancient and powerful, honed by evolution to ensure survival.
Yeah.
But those same emotions
Yeah.
can sometimes lead to what he calls emotional hijacking.
Emotional hijacking.
Think of it like this.
Okay.
You're suddenly flooded with this intense emotion,
Uh-huh.
and it feels like your rational brain takes a back seat.
Oh, I've totally been there. Like that time I almost got into a fender bender and felt this surge of anger before I even had time to process what was happening.
Yeah.
Goleman explains that this hijacking happens because of how our brains are wired.
Uh-huh.
The amygdala, which is our brain's alarm system, reacts to threats
Right.
before the thinking part of our brain, the neocortex, even catches up.
It's like your amygdala is a super fast bodyguard, always on alert, but that means sometimes it reacts before your rational mind can step in and say, hold on, maybe this isn't a real emergency. It's why you might yell at someone and regret it later, or just react in a way that doesn't make sense.
Makes total sense.
In hindsight.
That explains so much. I always wondered why I sometimes acted impulsively, like my emotions were calling the shots. It's reassuring to know there's actually a scientific explanation for that.
Yeah.
But Goleman doesn't just leave us with the problem of emotional hijacking.
No, he does.
He gives us this framework for building emotional intelligence.
Absolutely. He outlines these 5 key components of emotional intelligence:
Okay.
self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. Think of these as tools you can use to manage your emotions and build stronger relationships.
Okay, so self-awareness is knowing your emotions as you experience them.
Right.
And self-regulation is managing those emotions so they don't control you.
Exactly.
So like recognizing you're feeling angry
Yeah.
and then taking a deep breath instead of exploding.
Exactly. And then there's motivation,
Yeah.
which is about harnessing your emotions to reach your goals. Imagine an athlete channeling their passion and determination to achieve victory.
Right.
They're masters of emotional motivation.
Totally.
Then we have empathy,
Yeah.
sensing and understanding what others are feeling.
Right. And empathy is so important in all our relationships. It helps us connect with others on a deeper level.
Goleman argues that empathy is a skill you can actually develop and strengthen.
That's encouraging. So it's not just something you're born with or without.
Exactly.
And finally, we have social skills.
Yes.
The art of handling relationships effectively.
Think of that friend who can just walk into a room full of strangers and effortlessly strike up conversations.
Right.
They're using social intelligence to build rapport and connection.
So we've got this amazing set of emotional tools at our disposal.
You do?
But how do we use them when faced with those big, overwhelming emotions like anger, anxiety, and sadness? Goleman offers some really practical strategies for dealing with those.
He does.
And I'm really interested to dive into those.
Yeah, let's start with anger, which can be one of the most challenging emotions to control.
Okay.
Goleman talks about the anger rush.
The anger rush.
Yeah, that surge of adrenaline and energy that makes you want to fight or lash out.
Right.
He explains that we can actually short-circuit this anger response if we understand how timing works.
Timing.
Yes, timing.
How does that work?
Well, Goleman draws on the research of Dolph Zellman,
Okay.
who found like if you can introduce calming information or just a different perspective, before someone acts on their anger,
Okay.
you can actually de-escalate the situation.
So let's say someone cuts me off in traffic and I'm instantly furious.
Yeah.
But then I remember they might be rushing to the hospital
Right.
or dealing with some personal emergency that I don't know about.
Exactly.
Suddenly, my anger starts to dissipate.
That's the idea.
So next time I feel that anger rush, It's worth taking a moment to pause and consider the other person's perspective.
Right.
That could help me avoid a major meltdown.
It could.
But what about when you're stuck in that cycle of anger,
Yeah.
replaying the situation over and over in your head?
That can be tough.
Yeah.
Zillman also found that simply understanding why someone acted the way they did can be a powerful antidote to anger.
Mhm.
Even if you don't agree with their actions,
Yeah.
recognizing that they might be stressed or overwhelmed or going through something difficult can make you less likely to retaliate or hold a grudge.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that sometimes people's actions aren't about us.
Right.
They might be dealing with things we have no idea about.
Exactly.
And that shift in perspective can be so helpful.
It can.
So we've talked about anger,
Yeah.
but what about anxiety?
Oh, anxiety. It
Yeah.
can be so overwhelming
It really can.
and hard to control.
It feels like it just takes over sometimes.
Goleman dives into the research of Thomas Borkovec,
Okay.
an expert on anxiety.
Okay.
Borkovec found that worrying, while it feels like you're trying to problem solve, can actually backfire and make you feel worse.
Yeah.
It tricks you into thinking you're being productive, but often you're just stuck in a mental loop.
It's like that hamster wheel analogy.
Yes.
You're running and running, but getting nowhere.
Exactly. So how do we escape that worry trap?
Right. It feels easier said than done.
It does take effort, but Borkovec found that the first step is self-awareness.
Okay.
Noticing those anxious thoughts as they come up.
Noticing them.
Yeah, and then he suggests something called scheduled worry time.
Scheduled worry time?
Yeah.
Wait, are you telling me that setting aside time to actually worry can help reduce anxiety?
That's exactly what he's saying.
That sounds counterintuitive.
It does, but hear me out.
Okay.
Instead of letting worry control your whole day, you
Yeah.
contain it to a specific time, like maybe 15 minutes each evening.
Okay.
And during that time,
Mhm.
you let yourself fully engage with your worries. You can write them down,
Okay.
and you can even brainstorm potential solutions. But the rest of the day is a worry-free zone.
So if anxiety pops up during the day,
Yeah.
I just gently remind myself
Right.
that I'll address it during my scheduled worry time.
Exactly. It's like giving your anxiety a designated outlet
I love
so it doesn't spill over into everything else.
It's like creating a container for it.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to try that. But so far we've covered anger and anxiety.
We have.
What about sadness?
Sadness.
Yeah, everyone experiences it at some point,
Right.
but it can be hard to know how to cope.
Goleman acknowledges that sadness has its purpose,
Okay.
He differentiates between healthy melancholy,
Polly.
which can be a time for reflection,
Okay.
and then debilitating depression, which
Yeah.
requires professional help.
Of course, of course.
But for milder sadness,
Yeah.
he explores common coping strategies, but highlights that some, unfortunately, can backfire.
Like isolating yourself.
Yeah, like when you're feeling down and just want to withdraw and avoid everyone. It's a natural response.
Yeah.
But Goleman points out that isolation often intensifies feelings of loneliness and sadness.
It makes sense.
He emphasizes social connection as a way to lift our spirits.
Okay.
Spending time with loved ones, engaging in activities we enjoy, these things can make a huge difference.
He actually mentions a study that found socializing is one of the most effective ways people try to combat sadness.
Oh, interesting.
But with a caveat,
Okay.
it only works if you're genuinely engaging with others,
I see.
not dwelling on your negative thoughts the whole time.
It's about shifting your focus.
Right, so it's about actively choosing to engage with the people around you.
Exactly. And Goleman also highlights the power of cognitive techniques to challenge those negative thought patterns that keep us stuck in a cycle of sadness.
Okay, so instead of replaying those negative thoughts over and over,
Yeah.
we should try to shift our attention to more positive thoughts, activities, or memories.
That's the idea.
I can see how that would help break the cycle. Goleman also emphasizes self-care during times of sadness.
Mm.
Getting enough sleep, eating well, exercising. It seems so simple,
Right.
but we sometimes forget the basics when we're feeling down.
It's like laying the foundation for emotional well-being.
Right.
Those basic needs have to be met before we can truly address our emotional challenges.
So we've tackled some pretty heavy emotional terrain.
Yeah,
Anger, anxiety, sadness.
we have.
But now I want to shift gears and explore the power of positive emotions.
I like it.
I'm ready for a dose of optimism.
Goleman dedicates a whole chapter to the benefits of positive emotions
Yeah.
for well-being and performance.
Okay.
He even suggests happiness might be the most underestimated ingredient in achieving success.
I love that. It goes against that old no pain, no gain mentality.
Right.
He talks about optimism and flow,
Yes.
two concepts that really resonate with me.
They're fascinating concepts.
Tell me more.
Well, let's start with optimism.
Okay.
Goleman draws on the work of Martin Seligman, a pioneer in positive psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Seligman defines optimism as the tendency to see failures as temporary and specific rather than permanent and pervasive.
So instead of thinking, I'm a failure,
Yeah.
an optimist might say, okay, that didn't work out this time,
Right.
but I learned from it and I'll try again with a different approach.
Exactly. And Seligman's research shows that optimism impacts everything from resilience
Okay.
to our success in achieving goals.
Interesting.
He even tells this incredible story about the insurance company MetLife.
MetLife.
Yeah. They were struggling to find successful salespeople.
Okay.
So Seligman convinced them to hire a group of applicants who scored high on an optimism test, but didn't meet their usual hiring criteria.
So they took a chance on these optimistic candidates.
They did.
What happened?
Mhm.
Did those optimistic salespeople outperform everyone else?
They did. They outsold the more pessimistic salespeople
Wow.
by a significant margin.
So a positive outlook can actually be a key ingredient in success.
It can.
That's a really inspiring story.
Yeah.
It really shows how optimism can fuel our motivation and help us bounce back from setbacks.
It does.
Now, what about flow? That concept always intrigues me.
Flow is a term coined by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi.
Okay.
He describes it as a state of effortless focus and complete absorption in an activity.
You know that feeling of being in the zone?
Yeah.
Where time flies by, you lose yourself in the task.
Right.
And you just feel deeply satisfied and joyful.
Those are perfect examples. And what's fascinating is that Csikszentmihalyi found that flow not only makes us happier,
Yep.
but also boosts our learning and creativity.
It makes you wonder if there are ways to intentionally cultivate flow in our lives.
There are.
Like, how do we find those activities that consistently put us in that zone?
Csikszentmihalyi's research found that flow is more likely to occur when we're engaged in activities that challenge us,
Okay.
but are also within our skill set.
So if the task is too easy,
Right.
we get bored.
You got it.
And if it's too difficult, we get frustrated and anxious.
Exactly. Flow happens in that sweet spot where we're fully engaged and stretching our abilities, but not overwhelmed.
So it's about finding that perfect balance between challenge and skill.
Exactly. But what puts one person in flow might be boring for someone else, right?
Absolutely. It's about discovering those activities that really ignite your passion and allow you to get lost in the moment.
And the good news is flow can be cultivated in a wide range of activities,
Like what?
from creative pursuits like painting or writing to physical activities like sports or dancing,
Right.
even intellectual challenges like learning a new language or solving complex problems.
It makes me think about those people who seem to effortlessly achieve great things.
Yeah,
Maybe they're masters of finding and cultivating flow in their lives.
it's possible.
They're not just working harder, they're working smarter,
Yeah.
finding those activities that fully engage their minds and talents.
I think you've hit on a key takeaway from Goleman's book.
What's that?
Emotional intelligence isn't just about controlling negative emotions.
Right.
It's also about harnessing the power of positive emotions
Oh, yeah.
to fuel success, creativity, and overall well-being.
That's such a refreshing perspective.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that happiness isn't just a result of success.
Right.
It can be a driving force.
Right.
Now, we've talked a lot about managing our own emotions.
Yes.
But what about our interactions with others? How does emotional intelligence shape our relationships?
That's where empathy comes in.
Empathy.
Remember, empathy is the ability to sense and understand what others are feeling.
Right.
Goleman argues it's crucial for all successful relationships, whether it's with a partner, a friend, or even a coworker.
I find it fascinating that our capacity for empathy emerges so early in life.
It does.
Goleman talks about research on infants that shows they're already tuned in to the emotional states of others.
He describes a study where they observed infants as young as 1 year old.
Wow, that young.
Yeah. And when they saw another baby crying,
Yeah.
they'd often try to comfort them. Some even brought their own mother over to help.
That's so sweet.
Right.
It shows that even before they fully grasp that they're separate individuals,
Right.
babies are already picking up on the emotions of others.
Exactly. Goleman goes on to describe the work of Daniel Stern,
Okay.
who studied attunement between parents and infants.
Attunement.
Yeah, that's when parents are really tuned in to their baby's emotions.
Okay.
Mirroring their expressions, responding sensitively to their cues, it creates a sense of deep connection and security for the infant.
It's like an emotional dance.
Yes.
The parent and child are in sync, creating a bond of understanding through those nonverbal cues.
And those early interactions can impact how we approach relationships throughout our lives.
How so?
Well, if we've had positive, tuned experiences early on,
Mm-hmm.
we're more likely to approach relationships with trust and a sense of safety.
That makes sense.
But what happens when those early experiences weren't so positive?
Right. What if there was neglect or lack of attunement? Does that mean we're destined to have troubled relationships?
Goldman suggests that while those early patterns can influence how we relate to others,
Yeah.
they don't entirely determine our fate.
Okay, so there's hope.
There is. Our brains are adaptable,
Yeah.
and we can learn and grow emotionally throughout our lives.
So even if we didn't have the best start,
Right.
we can still develop healthy relationship patterns.
We can. Therapy can be incredibly helpful in understanding those early patterns and developing new, healthier ways of relating.
So empathy is the foundation for healthy relationships.
It is.
But how can we actually use empathy
Yeah.
to improve communication, resolve conflicts, or build stronger bonds with others?
Goldman provides some great examples of how empathy can be used as a tool
Okay.
to connect with others and navigate those challenging situations.
Like what?
Well, he talks about being able to read nonverbal cues.
Nonverbal cues.
Yeah, like facial expressions,
Yeah.
tone of voice, body language.
Yeah, right.
Think about it.
Okay.
How much information do we convey without even saying a word?
It's true. We're constantly sending and receiving emotional signals.
We are.
Often without even realizing it.
And Goldman highlights the research of Robert Rosenthal,
Okay.
who developed a test called the Profile of Nonverbal Sensitivity.
The profile of nonverbal sensitivity.
Yeah, or PONS for short.
PONS. Okay.
It's basically a series of video clips showing a woman expressing different emotions.
Okay.
But in some of the clips,
Uh-huh.
certain nonverbal cues are blocked out.
So you have to rely on the other cues
Exactly.
to figure out what she's feeling.
It's a way to test how good people are at picking up on subtle emotional signals.
It's like a test for emotional intelligence.
Exactly. And they found that some people are definitely more attuned than others.
Interesting.
And those who scored higher on the PONS test were generally better at understanding and responding to the emotions of others in real-life situations.
It makes me think about those people who just seem to effortlessly navigate social situations.
Yeah.
They must be highly skilled at reading those subtle cues and adjusting their behavior accordingly.
They're like emotional detectives.
Exactly. But Goldman emphasizes that while some people might have a natural talent for empathy,
Right.
it's a skill you can learn and practice.
We can.
He suggests paying closer attention to people's facial expressions,
Yeah.
listening more attentively to their tone of voice,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to imagine what it might be like to walk in their shoes.
That's a great way to build empathy.
So it's about taking the time to really see and understand what others are experiencing.
It is.
But we also need to be able to regulate our own emotions to be truly empathetic. Right?
Absolutely.
If we're overwhelmed by our own feelings,
Mhm.
it's hard to be present and attuned to others.
Self-regulation is essential for empathy.
It allows us to create space to see and understand what others are experiencing
Mm-hmm.
without getting lost in our own emotional reactions.
Exactly. And that understanding can make a huge difference in our relationships. It allows us to connect more deeply, communicate more effectively, and resolve conflicts more constructively.
But Goldman also explores what happens when empathy is lacking.
He does. He delves into the world of psychopaths.
Psychopaths.
Yeah, who are notorious for their lack of empathy and remorse.
Right.
He cites the work of Robert Hare, an expert on psychopathy, who found that psychopaths often struggle to understand emotional words.
Real.
They can learn the definitions,
Uh-huh.
but they don't grasp the deeper emotional meaning behind them.
That's fascinating.
He even describes a study where psychopaths were about to receive an electric shock,
Oh, wow.
and they showed no signs of fear or anxiety.
So it's like they're emotionally disconnected from the experience.
Exactly. And because they don't experience fear themselves,
Right.
they have a difficult time understanding or empathizing with the fear of others.
That's chilling.
It is a chilling example of how a lack of empathy can lead to callous and harmful behavior.
Goldman also links a lack of empathy to aggression and violence,
Yeah.
arguing that when we can't understand or share the pain of others,
Right.
it becomes much easier to inflict harm.
And he suggests that one of the most effective ways to prevent violence is to cultivate empathy in children from an early age.
So we're back to the importance of emotional literacy.
We are. If we can teach children to understand and value the feelings of others, it can create a more compassionate and peaceful society.
This conversation about empathy has me thinking about social skills.
Social skills, yeah.
are they really just about being charming?
That's a good question.
Or is there something deeper at play?
Goleman argues that true social intelligence goes far beyond superficial charm.
Okay.
It's about understanding social dynamics,
Okay.
reading people's emotions,
Right.
and adjusting your behavior to create harmonious interactions.
So it's about being adaptable and responsive to the social environment?
Exactly.
Those are valuable skills for any area of life, whether it's our personal relationships or our professional endeavors.
He even talks about giving and receiving criticism effectively.
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is, but it's a skill that's essential for both personal growth and professional success.
I think about how many conflicts arise from miscommunication
Oh.
or a lack of emotional awareness.
It's true.
And on the flip side, how much smoother our interactions would be if we all had a better grasp of these social skills.
Exactly. And Goleman emphasizes that social intelligence,
Yeah,
like other aspects of emotional intelligence, can be learned and developed.
that's encouraging. I'm curious to hear more about his suggestions for improving these skills.
Me too.
He also mentioned something called the group IQ, which sounds fascinating.
It does.
But before we dive into that, I think it's time for a little break. We'll be right back to explore the practical side of boosting our social intelligence
Okay.
and delve into that intriguing concept of the group IQ.
Sounds good. So before the break, we were discussing how those social skills, those crucial social skills, can really impact how we interact with others. And you were curious about Goleman's suggestions for how to improve them.
Yeah, let's get practical. What can we actually do to, sharpen our social intelligence?
Well, he suggests we start by really paying attention to how we express ourselves emotionally.
Okay.
You know, the more socially adept we are, the better we are at controlling the emotional signals we send to those around us.
Okay.
You know, think about it. We've all experienced those moments when someone's bad mood just seems to, radiate outward,
Yeah.
creating this tense atmosphere.
It's like their negativity is contagious.
Exactly.
You can practically feel the tension in the air.
Yeah, and conversely, you've probably encountered those individuals, who have this calming or uplifting presence. They're often masters of emotional regulation.
Right.
Able to maintain composure and positivity even in tough situations.
So a big part of social intelligence is being aware of how our emotions impact others.
Exactly.
It's not about suppressing our feelings,
Right.
but expressing them in a way that's, constructive and considerate.
Well said. Goleman also highlights the importance of attunement in social interactions.
Go.
Remember that concept of attunement we discussed earlier with parents and infants?
Yeah.
Being in sync, responding to each other's cues,
Yeah.
creating that sense of connection.
Yeah, it was like they were doing this emotional dance,
Exactly.
building a bond of understanding through nonverbal communication.
And Goleman believes that attunement plays a crucial role in all our relationships.
Okay, all of them.
Yeah, romantic partners, friends, colleagues, even someone you've just met.
Wow.
It's about picking up on those subtle emotional signals
Okay.
and adjusting your behavior accordingly.
So, if someone seems down, maybe I tone down my, exuberance a bit
Yeah,
and offer a listening ear instead.
exactly.
Or if someone's anxious, I might try to project calm and reassurance.
Exactly.
It's amazing how much of our communication happens on that nonverbal level.
It really is.
We're always sending and receiving emotional signals, often without even realizing it.
And the more attuned we are to those signals, the
Yeah.
smoother our interactions become.
You also mentioned being curious about Goleman's concept of the group IQ.
Oh, yes.
What exactly does he mean by that?
Well, Goleman argues that a group's emotional intelligence can actually be greater.
Greater.
Yeah, greater than the sum of its individual members' emotional intelligence.
Interesting.
When people work together effectively, they create this synergy
Uh-huh.
that boosts their problem solving,
Oh,
their
sure.
creativity, and their overall performance.
So it's like the group itself develops its own collective emotional intelligence.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
It is.
What factors contribute to a high group IQ?
Well, Goleman highlights the importance of a shared sense of purpose,
Okay.
clear communication, and a climate of trust and respect.
Okay.
When these are present, group members feel safe, sharing ideas,
Right.
offering constructive criticism,
Yeah.
and supporting each other.
He also talks about the benefits of having a diverse range of perspectives within a group.
Absolutely. When people with different backgrounds and different ways of thinking come together,
Yeah.
they can generate more creative and innovative solutions.
Makes sense.
But to really harness that diversity,
Yeah.
the group needs the emotional intelligence to manage those differences well.
So it's not just about having diversity.
Right?
It's about having the social skills
Yeah.
to turn that diversity into a strength.
Exactly. Goleman warns that groups lacking emotional intelligence
Okay.
can fall prey to something called groupthink.
Groupthink.
Yeah.
That sounds a little ominous.
It can be.
Okay.
Groupthink happens when a group becomes so focused on harmony and conformity that they prioritize those over critical thinking and independent decision-making.
So dissenting opinions get suppressed.
Exactly.
Warning signs get ignored.
Yep.
And risky decisions are made without fully considering the consequences.
It's like they become an echo chamber where everyone reinforces each other's beliefs
Right.
and no one dares to rock the boat.
How do we prevent that?
That's a good question.
How do we ensure a group's emotional intelligence is actually helping and not hindering its decision-making?
Well, Goleman suggests several strategies, like encouraging open dialogue,
Okay.
actively seeking out dissenting opinions.
So making sure everyone feels comfortable speaking up.
Exactly, and having a devil's advocate,
Oh, interesting.
to challenge assumptions and poke holes in arguments.
He also mentions the importance of strong leadership,
Absolutely.
who can create that environment where people feel safe speaking up,
Yeah,
expressing doubts,
right.
and offering alternative perspectives.
And it's not just about having a leader who's emotionally intelligent themselves.
Okay.
It's about them fostering a culture where emotional intelligence is valued and practiced by everyone.
So it's like a top-down, a bottom-up approach.
Exactly.
This whole conversation about group IQ makes me think about the implications for workplaces.
It's huge for workplaces.
Does Golan explore that in his book?
He does. He dedicates a whole chapter to it.
Yeah.
As we head into a future where collaboration and teamwork are increasingly vital,
Right.
these skills are going to be essential for success.
That makes perfect sense.
Think about it, today's organizations, they need to be agile,
Yeah.
adaptable,
Mm-hmm.
and innovative to thrive in this rapidly changing world.
It's true.
And that requires teams who can communicate effectively and solve problems together.
So what does Goleman say companies can do to actually reap the benefits of emotional intelligence?
Well, he argues that investing in developing employees' emotional intelligence yields significant benefits.
Like what?
Studies show that teams with higher emotional intelligence tend to have higher productivity,
Oh,
better communication,
makes sense.
lower turnover rates,
Interesting.
and a more positive work environment.
It sounds like a win-win.
It is.
Happier employees,
Yeah.
a more positive workplace,
Mhm.
and a more successful organization overall.
Exactly. Goleman also discusses the importance of emotional intelligence in leadership.
Okay.
Effective leaders,
Yeah.
they aren't just brilliant strategists
They
or
aren't.
charismatic speakers.
Right.
They're skilled at understanding and managing their own emotions and the emotions of those they lead.
That makes sense.
He tells this story about an engineer who received harsh criticism,
Ooh, tough.
from a vice president during a meeting.
Okay.
The engineer was so demoralized that he almost abandoned the project altogether.
Wow.
But then he did something brave.
What did he do?
He went back to the vice president,
Okay.
and he calmly explained how the criticism had made him feel.
Good for him.
And he asked for clarification.
Oh, wow.
The vice president was taken aback.
I bet.
He hadn't intended to be hurtful at all.
Oh.
He actually saw potential in the project,
Okay.
but he just hadn't expressed his feedback effectively.
So the engineer's emotional intelligence turned a potentially negative situation into a productive one.
Oh.
He advocated for himself, clarified misunderstandings, and ultimately saved his project.
It's a perfect example of how emotional intelligence can bridge communication gaps
Right.
and turn conflict into collaboration. Goleman emphasizes that this kind of emotional awareness
Yeah.
is crucial for a positive and productive work environment.
He also talks about creating a culture of empathy in the workplace.
He does.
What does he say about that?
Well, he argues that organizations that prioritize empathy and compassion
Yeah.
create a more supportive and fulfilling environment for their employees.
Okay.
And that translates into greater loyalty, higher morale, and better performance.
It's the opposite of that outdated, leave your emotions at the door mentality.
Exactly. Which, let's be honest, is probably more harmful than helpful in the long run.
I think so too.
Goldman points out that when we try to suppress our emotions at work,
Yeah.
they don't just disappear.
Right.
They often come out in unhealthy ways,
Wow.
like increased stress,
Yeah.
burnout,
Hmm.
conflict, even physical health problems.
So acknowledging and addressing emotions in the workplace.
Yeah.
It's not just about being nice.
Right.
It's about creating a healthier, more productive,
Uh,
and ultimately more successful organization.
Precisely. And Goldman then explores how emotional intelligence plays a role in managing diversity and inclusion in the workplace.
That's an incredibly important topic, especially in
well.
today's increasingly diverse world.
It is.
So what does Goldman say about that?
Well, he starts by acknowledging that prejudice is a deeply ingrained emotional response
Okay.
that can be really difficult to completely eliminate.
Right.
He cites Thomas Pettigrew,
Okay.
who argues that the emotional roots of prejudice often form in childhood,
Interesting.
making these reactions particularly resistant to change.
So even if we intellectually understand that prejudice is wrong,
Yeah.
we might still have unconscious biases or emotional reactions that influence how we interact with people from different backgrounds.
Exactly. And Goldman warns that traditional diversity training programs often fall short
Why is that?
because they focus on changing people's beliefs
Okay.
without addressing their feelings.
I see.
He believes that effective diversity and inclusion initiatives need to go deeper,
Okay, deeper how?
creating opportunities for people to connect on a human level,
Okay.
share their experiences,
Yeah.
and build empathy across differences.
So it's about moving beyond just checking boxes
Right.
and actually fostering genuine understanding and connection.
Exactly. He highlights examples of organizations that are successfully implementing this approach.
Okay.
Creating a more inclusive and collaborative environment where everyone feels valued and respected.
I can't help but think about how much potential is lost when organizations fail to leverage the diversity of their workforce.
It's true.
When people feel marginalized or excluded,
Yeah.
they're less likely to share their ideas or contribute their talents or
Right.
fully engage in their work.
Exactly. And conversely, when people feel a sense of belonging and inclusion,
Yeah.
they're more likely to be creative, innovative, and committed to the organization's success.
It's about creating a culture where everyone feels empowered to contribute their unique talents and perspectives.
Exactly.
This whole conversation about emotional intelligence in the workplace
Yeah.
has been so eye-opening.
It's a big topic.
It's not just about soft skills
Right.
or being a nice person.
Yeah.
It's about creating a more productive, fulfilling, and ultimately more successful work environment for everyone.
I think that's the key takeaway.
I agree.
It makes me wonder about the role of emotional intelligence in healthcare.
Ooh, interesting.
Does Goldman touch on how it impacts patient care?
He does. He has a whole chapter exploring the connection between emotional intelligence and health.
Okay.
It's a fascinating and often overlooked aspect of well-being.
It is.
And it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
Our emotions and physical health are deeply intertwined.
Absolutely. So what insights does Goldman offer about this mind-body connection?
He highlights this groundbreaking research by David Felton,
Okay.
who discovered that the nervous system and the immune system are in constant communication.
Oh.
They're not separate entities, as previously thought.
Okay.
They're intricately linked.
So our emotions, which are processed in the nervous system,
Yes.
can directly impact our immune system.
Exactly.
Interesting. So when we talk about stress management,
Yeah.
it's not just about feeling better mentally and emotionally.
Right.
It's about protecting our physical health as well.
Goldman then explores the specific health risks associated with chronic anger,
Oh, okay.
anxiety, and depression.
What does he say about the impact of anger?
He cites research showing that chronic anger is a major risk factor for heart disease.
Wow.
He even explains how anger can affect the heart's efficiency as a pump.
Really?
It's incredible how much power our emotions have over our physical well-being.
That's a powerful image, Are anger actually disrupting the rhythm of our hearts?
It really is.
What about anxiety? How does that impact our health?
He talks about the link between anxiety and a weakened immune response,
Okay.
making us more vulnerable to infections and other illnesses.
So it's like our bodies are constantly on high alert, depleting our resources
Right.
and leaving us more susceptible to getting sick.
And what about the impact of depression?
Good question.
He explains that while depression itself may not directly cause illness,
Okay.
It can hinder recovery
Okay.
and increase the risk of complications.
So it can make it harder to get well if
Exactly.
you're already sick.
He shares this poignant story about a woman with metastatic breast cancer
Okay.
who was also struggling with depression.
It's tough when those two things go together.
It is, and every time she went to see her oncologist,
Yeah.
she would end up in tears.
Oh, wow.
And sadly, her doctor would basically ask her to leave immediately. He seemed completely dismissive of her emotional distress.
That's heartbreaking.
It is. And it highlights how often medical professionals overlook the emotional side of illness.
It's true. It's so important to acknowledge the whole person,
Exactly.
not just the physical symptoms.
Goldman argues that modern medicine often lacks emotional intelligence.
I can see that.
For patients, every interaction with a doctor or nurse
Yeah,
is an opportunity for reassurance and support.
right.
Or, if handled poorly, a source of added stress and despair.
So he's advocating for a more humane and holistic approach to medicine,
He is.
one that recognizes and addresses the emotional needs of patients as integral to healing.
Exactly. And there's growing evidence that addressing emotional distress can actually improve medical outcomes.
That makes sense. Do you have an example?
He mentions a study where elderly patients with hip fractures who received therapy for depression,
Okay.
in addition to their regular medical care,
Yeah.
actually left the hospital sooner.
Wow, that's amazing.
Those who didn't receive the therapy.
So addressing their emotional needs actually led to a faster physical recovery.
It did. And it resulted in cost savings for the hospital as well. It's a win-win for both patients and the healthcare system.
I love that.
So what specific suggestions does Goldman offer for doctors and nurses to cultivate greater emotional intelligence in their interactions with patients?
It's such an important skill for them to have.
He recommends practicing active listening,
Okay.
showing empathy,
Yeah.
and creating a safe space for patients to express their feelings and concerns.
It sounds so simple, but it can make a world of difference
It can.
for patients who are going through a difficult time.
He also stresses the importance of clear communication,
Okay.
explaining medical procedures in a way that patients can understand, and being honest and compassionate when delivering difficult news.
So it's like a shift from a purely clinical approach to a more holistic one
Exactly.
that acknowledges the interconnectedness of our minds, emotions, and bodies.
Goldman argues that the shift toward a more emotionally intelligent approach to healthcare
Yeah.
is essential for improving patient care, reducing suffering, and ultimately creating a healthier society.
This deep dive into emotional intelligence has been truly illuminating. It's clear these skills aren't just nice-to-haves. They're essential for navigating life's complexities, building strong relationships, achieving success, and even maintaining our physical well-being.
And what's so encouraging is that Goldman emphasizes that emotional intelligence is not fixed.
Yeah.
It's something we can develop and strengthen throughout our lives. It's a message of hope and empowerment.
It is. We have the power to shape our own emotional destinies.
But if emotional intelligence is so important,
Yeah.
why aren't we learning these skills from a younger age? Why isn't it a core part of our education system?
That's a great question, and it's something Goldman addresses directly in the last part of his book,
Okay.
where he explores the concept of emotional literacy.
Emotional literacy.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Well, Goldman argues that just as we teach children to read and write,
Right.
we should also teach them the language of emotions.
How to understand,
Yeah.
manage, and express their feelings in healthy ways.
Makes sense.
If kids are equipped with these skills from a young age,
Yeah.
they'll be better prepared for life's challenges,
Uh-huh.
build stronger relationships, and make positive contributions to society.
It makes perfect sense.
It does. And Goldman describes some really inspiring examples of schools that are implementing emotional literacy programs with remarkable results.
Like what?
Well, there's a program called Self-Science at the Nueva Learning Center in San Francisco.
Self-science.
Yeah,
I love that name.
it's a good one.
It sounds like a journey of self-discovery.
It is. Developed by Karen Stone McCown.
Okay.
The program emphasizes that emotional literacy is just as important for learning as traditional subjects.
That's interesting.
And it makes sense, if children are struggling with emotional distress
Yeah.
or interpersonal conflicts, it's going to impact their ability to focus and learn. Absolutely. So what do they do in Self-Science to address these challenges?
They use real-life situations and conflicts as teaching tools.
Okay.
You know, imagine a playground dispute.
Yeah.
The teacher guides the students through identifying the feelings involved, exploring different perspectives, and
Right.
brainstorming solutions that meet everyone's needs.
It's like they're practicing emotional intelligence in action.
Exactly. And through those real-life examples,
Yeah.
they're learning those valuable skills like conflict resolution,
Okay.
perspective taking,
Right.
and empathy.
Are there other programs like this?
There are. Another great example is the Social Competence Program
Okay.
at Troop School in New Haven, Connecticut.
Okay. And that one covers similar ground as self-science.
It does, but in a different context.
How so?
Well, Troop is an inner-city school
Okay.
where many children face challenges like poverty,
Yeah.
violence,
Right.
and family instability.
So these kids are dealing with a lot of stress and trauma in their lives.
Exactly, and the program recognizes that these emotional challenges can impact their learning and success in school.
It makes sense that they would need extra support.
They do, and they use techniques like mindfulness exercises,
Okay.
relaxation techniques, and creative expression activities to help children regulate their emotions and develop coping skills.
So they're creating a nurturing space for children to explore their feelings
They are.
and develop healthy ways of managing their emotional responses.
And they also emphasize building positive relationships,
Right.
you know, both with peers and with adults.
Okay, with everyone.
Yeah, they teach kids how to communicate effectively, resolve conflicts peacefully, and develop a sense of belonging and connection.
So it's a holistic approach,
It is.
addressing both the individual and social aspects of emotional intelligence.
And what's exciting is that these programs are showing measurable results.
Really? That's great to hear.
You know, children who participate tend to have better social skills,
Okay.
improved academic performance,
Hmm.
and a more positive outlook on life.
That's amazing. It's amazing how investing in children's emotional and social development can have such a profound impact.
They can.
It's not just about individual children either.
Right.
It's about building a more compassionate
Yeah.
and peaceful society.
Absolutely.
I love that vision.
It's a good one.
It's inspiring to think about how we can scale these programs to reach more children and
Yeah.
transform the world, you know?
I agree.
But I'm curious, do these emotional skills stick with kids as they grow older?
That's a great question.
Like, is it a lasting impact?
Well, more research is needed, but the early results are promising.
Okay.
Studies show that children who participate in these programs tend to maintain those skills over time,
Okay.
benefiting their relationships,
Okay.
their work,
Yeah,
and their well-being as they mature.
that's good to know.
It's not a quick fix, you know?
No.
It's
Okay.
a long-term investment in their future success and happiness.
It seems like Goldman is advocating for a paradigm shift in how we view emotional intelligence.
He is.
We place so much emphasis on cognitive intelligence.
Right.
You know, IQ scores, standardized tests.
And while those are important,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
clearly not the whole picture.
I agree.
Goldman makes a really compelling case that emotional intelligence is equally crucial,
Yeah.
if not more so,
Right.
for navigating life,
Yeah.
building meaningful relationships,
Mhm.
achieving our goals, and creating a better world.
I love that.
It's a good goal.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
It has.
It's really given me a whole new perspective on the power of emotional intelligence and its impact on our lives.
What stood out most to you from our exploration of Goldman's book?
There were so many fascinating concepts.
There were.
But the idea that resonated most was that emotional intelligence is not fixed.
Yeah,
It's something we can cultivate and strengthen throughout life.
I agree. It's a very empowering message.
It is. You know, it's never too late to start learning and growing.
Exactly. As we cultivate these skills in ourselves and in future generations,
Yeah.
we're creating a world where compassion, understanding, and connection can flourish.
Beautifully said. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been exploring this fascinating world of emotional intelligence. And before the break, we were talking about those emotional literacy programs, teaching kids these emotional skills from a young age.
Right.
These programs sound really amazing,
Yeah.
but I'm curious about the specifics.
Okay.
How do they actually work?
Well, one of the key approaches in programs like self-science and the social competence program is using real-life situations
Okay.
and conflicts as teaching moments.
Okay, so instead of just talking about abstract concepts,
Right.
they're giving kids practical tools to navigate those emotional ups and downs of their daily lives.
Exactly. It's about giving them hands-on experience with emotional intelligence.
So, like, imagine a scenario like a playground dispute.
Yeah.
How would that work in practice?
Well, the teacher would guide the students through the whole process,
Right.
helping them identify the feelings involved,
Hmm.
explore different perspectives,
Right.
and then brainstorm solutions that address everyone's needs.
It's like they're learning to be emotional detectives.
Yeah.
Figuring out what's going on beneath the surface.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
through those real-life examples,
Yeah.
they're developing crucial skills like conflict resolution,
Right.
perspective taking,
Right.
and empathy.
Now, you mentioned that the social competence program is implemented in an inner city school
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of the kids face some significant challenges.
They do.
So how does the program address those unique needs?
Well, they recognize that many of these children have experienced trauma or chronic stress,
Yeah,
which can deeply affect their emotional development.
of course.
So the program really focuses on healing and building resilience.
So it sounds like they're creating a safe and supportive environment for these kids
Exactly.
to process their experiences and develop healthy coping mechanisms.
Yeah. They use a variety of techniques like mindfulness exercises, relaxation techniques, and creative expression activities to help children regulate their emotions and build those essential coping skills.
So they're not just teaching them about emotions, they're
Yeah.
giving them the tools to actually manage their emotions in healthy ways.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And they also emphasize the importance of positive relationships,
Oh.
both with peers and adults.
With everyone.
Yeah, they teach kids how to communicate effectively,
Great.
resolve conflicts peacefully,
Mm.
and develop that sense of belonging and connection that's so crucial for well-being.
It's really inspiring to see how these programs are making a real difference in these children's lives.
It is.
You mentioned that they're seeing some positive results.
Yeah, studies have shown that kids who participate in emotional literacy programs tend to have better social skills,
Okay.
improved academic performance,
Wow.
and a more positive outlook on life in general.
It's incredible how investing in children's emotional and social development can have such a ripple effect,
I agree.
impacting not just their personal lives,
Right.
but also their success in school and their overall well-being.
It really highlights how interconnected these different aspects of our lives are.
I agree.
Emotional intelligence isn't just about feelings.
Right.
It's about equipping ourselves with the skills to navigate the world successfully
Yeah.
and create a more positive future.
And these programs aren't just helping individual children thrive.
Right.
They're contributing to a more compassionate,
Yes.
just and peaceful society as a whole.
Absolutely.
That's a powerful vision.
It is.
It's inspiring to think about how we can scale these programs to reach more children and really transform the world.
It's a great goal.
This deep dive into emotional intelligence has been such a fascinating journey.
It has.
We've explored everything from the brain science behind emotional hijacking to practical strategies for managing difficult emotions, the importance of empathy in relationships,
Right.
the transformative power of emotional literacy in education.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. And the key takeaway for me is this. Emotional intelligence isn't a fixed trait. It's a set of skills that we can all develop and strengthen throughout our lives.
We can.
We really have the power to shape our own emotional destinies.
And what's so empowering about that message is that it's never too late to start learning and growing.
I agree.
As we cultivate these skills in ourselves and in future generations,
Yeah.
we're creating a world where compassion, understanding, and connection can truly flourish.
That's beautifully said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our emotional intelligence deep dive.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration into the world of emotional intelligence.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights and are feeling inspired to cultivate these essential skills in your own life.
I hope so too.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.